Hello, everybody, and welcome to my review of the 2005 remake of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, directed by Tim Burton. So, yes, as I promised in my other review, I did that one in memory of Gene Wilder. This I'm doing just as a comparison piece. I decided, you know what, if I'm going to review Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I might as well review both. I mean, there's, it would always, I'm sure, people after watching my original review would want to know what I thought of the remake. Well, here it is. So, it's pretty much the same story as before, but if anybody hasn't watched my other review, I'll explain the plot. So the plot is that it's based off the book by Roald Dahl. It tells the story of this chocolate inventor, well, slash sort of pioneer, Willy Wonka. He wants to basically find a new heir to his factory who would, take over from him. He feels like he has accomplished his life's work. And so he sends out 5 golden tickets into 5 random chocolate bars around the world in the hopes to bring 5 children in to visit his factory, and then he will decide who he feels would be a successful heir to his, well, not throne, to his legacy. But also we have these other plot threads of Willy Wonka's past. We get to learn a bit about his relationship with his father, Wilbur Wonka, who was a dentist. So yeah, there's all that going on as well. And the main child we focus on is, of course, Charlie Bucket, whose family is poor. And he really desperately wants a ticket. He wants to, even if it's just for the one time, just have the experience, and his Grandpa Joe is a great inspiration to him. And we also learn in this film that Grandpa Joe actually used to work for Willy Wonka, which is a bit of a different spin on the story. I thought, that was kind of interesting, but yeah. Okay, so the 2005 Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Oh boy. I don't know what I'm going to say with this one. I don't know. Immediately when you watch it, when you start watching it, there's just something inside that says to you, this doesn't feel right. And I don't know whether it's the fact that the movie's tone, whether it's I don't know what it is, but there's something about this movie that is just off. I think it's probably the fact that Tim Burton has directed this film. I'm not going to shit Tim Burton. Tim Burton is a good director. I recently saw Miss Peregrine, and that was good. I think Tim Burton's redeemed himself, but this is definitely one of his weakest films. I just thought this was a bit of a disappointment, really. I don't think it's horrible, but there's nothing particularly interesting about this film. I mean, it is pretty much just the same, but in a different tone. Like, comparing this one to the original, despite the fact that the plot is exactly the same, there are some major differences in terms of tone. This is much more almost dark and depressing, not necessarily gothic. Tim Burton can't really do a gothic family movie, but well, it shouldn't do for this anyway. But it's just weird. It's just very weird. I know that it's kind of meant to be slightly weird, but there's a limit, and I feel that they overstepped the limit. I mean, let's talk about the cast. Let's do it. I mean, it's very clear that we have a mixed cast in this film. The good cast members would have to be Freddie Highmore as Charlie. I mean, I don't think he's as good as Peter Ostrom from the original, but I still think for what it's worth, Highmore gives a decent performance at best, and you really, you do kind of care for him, but the film doesn't spend too much time with him, so yeah, you don't really you don't really connect with him as much as Peter Ostrom. Although Freddie Highmore's he's a good little actor. He would later go on to improve his acting. So he's just starting out. So we can forgive him. We can forgive him. But he's pretty good. He's the best of the kids anyway. Speaking of which, the kids I have a bit of a predisposition with the kids in this film. I feel that most of the kids, as in the five main kids, most of them are pretty bad. I mean, the good ones would have to be obviously Freddie Highmore. I think her name's AnnaSophia Robb. I think that's her name. Oh, I can't remember her name. I can't remember who plays Violet, but the girl that plays Violet, she's good. She would have to be quite good. She made Violet a bit more like feisty than the original version, even though the original version did have a bit of spunk to her. They made, I mean, I like the whole competitive side of it. That's quite nice. The others are just rubbish. They really are. I mean, the boy that plays Augustus Gloop has no charisma whatsoever. I mean, he's kind of funny. Like, it's funny watching him like eat all the food. Which is kind of that's kind of fun. But he doesn't do much else. I mean, he's not a central character in the story really. I mean, because they get rid of him pretty quickly. Although in this film it takes 49 minutes for them to get rid of Augustus Gloop. Yeah. The biggest disappointment has to be the actress that plays Veruca Salt, the young girl that plays her. She was terrible. I'm sorry, but I mean, she looks like the original actress from the original film. She looks scarily like her. However, the performance, she just underplayed it so much. I mean, I'm not asking for like a scream fest. I'm not asking for that. But I didn't feel it. I didn't believe it. And I wanted to believe it more than I did. I felt that there were moments, obviously there were moments where you could tell she was a brat, when she was like, oh, daddy, I want another squirrel. Get me a squirrel. I want another pony. Where's my golden ticket? I want my golden ticket. There's like 3 moments when you find she's a brat. The rest of the film, she's just like, oh, you've already said that. Or like, let's be friends, best friends. It's all so weird. Like, oh, I don't know. I mean, excuse me. Sorry about that. I mean, during the middle of the film, the actress just didn't look like she gave a fuck whatsoever. I mean, there's no energy in this film. That's the problem. This film, the tone of this film is so weird and depressing that you've sucked any charm out that you had in the original. And it shows in some of the performances. Like, some of the performances are just not great, like mediocre. I don't think she's an awful actress. I just think her performance is mediocre. She could have been so much better than what she was. And this, her father wasn't much better either. He was particularly wooden. Yeah, I mean, like with Mr. Salt in the original. Sorry to keep comparing to the original, but it's gonna happen. In the original film, Mr. Salt, you believed he was a man who was suffering under the desperation from his daughter. His daughter was literally pulling the strings, like she was like the puppeteer pulling the strings, and he had to string along and do her bidding. With this, you felt like he still had some control. Which is okay at the end of the film, of course, but I mean, you believed there was a brat there. I mean, with this, you were like, okay, she's a naughty girl. She's not really doing what she's told. She's being a brat, but you don't. It would be nice to accentuate that more. Sorry, I'm ranting, but for me, it was just a complete missed opportunity. And the boy that plays Mike TV, he got on my fucking nerves. Oh my god! I mean, look at this guy's face. Look at him. Does he look like he wants to be here? No. Does he look like he's having a good time? No. I know the character is meant to basically have a carefree attitude. Like, he doesn't really care. He's that he's won a golden ticket. He just wants to carry on doing what he's doing. I'm okay with that, but with with the original, there is a charm about it. Even in the characters, you can tell that. Even in Mike TV, within the original film, he had a certain kind of like saw himself as kind of like an action hero. Like, obviously, because he's a TV nut, he's been influenced by all that. With this, doesn't give a fuck. Does not give a fuck. Oh, and he was pissing me off, like, with all of his lines. I mean, I know he's meant to be a rebel, but for me, I just thought characterization didn't really help him in this instance. But that's the kids anyway. Let's talk about Johnny Depp. Right. Johnny Depp as Willy Wonka was bizarre. Quite bizarre. A very weird casting choice. I mean, what did you expect from Tim Burton? But even so, like, Depp plays... I mean, I'm going to have to agree with the major criticism that... Sorry, I thought I had something there. I'm going to have to agree with everybody else's major criticisms of this film in that Depp basically plays Willy Wonka like Michael Jackson. Not so much in the moonwalk sense of the word, but the in terms of the voice, it sounds very much like Michael Jackson. No offense to Michael Jackson whatsoever. I totally admire the guy, but I mean, it's a weird performance. In which case, it works for Willy Wonka, the fact that it's weird, but like the character's meant to be weird. Like, but with Gene Wilder, there was a limit. You could tell the guy was kind of insane. He was off his rocker, but Johnny Depp's portrayal feels very cartoonish and also at times kind of freakish. You might feel that this guy is mentally disturbed. I mean, they do delve into some of the emotional backstory, which is nice. The whole story with his father, played by Christopher Lee, who features briefly in the film. I mean, as far as that is concerned, I don't mind it. It didn't really do much for me, I suppose. I mean, because there wasn't much of it, It was nice to see a couple of flashbacks. I mean, the scene, I suppose it's nice, the scene at the end when he's reunited with his father, but for me, it didn't really strengthen his character too much, because he's still the most wonderfully weird chocolate maker in the world. It doesn't, he's just going to see his dad again. He hasn't. I suppose he's gone to make amends, but he hasn't really. I don't know. For me, it was just something about it was disjointed. I mean, the pacing of this film, it's really weird. I mean, the first parts are kind of rushed. Like, the film has a rushed feel to it. They rush all of the sort of the kids getting the tickets thing. They do that within like 2 minutes, whereas the original took its time, which I much preferred, and did it with a sense of quirkiness. I mean, in a similar sense, you still get with this film the hype aspects of when the tickets are being sent out into the bars and into the candy bars in the world. That's that's all good. But yeah, it's all rushed, slightly rushed. I mean, visually, the film is a little bit dated. I mean, what's up with the colour palette for this film? I mean, what the hell is up with the colour palette of this film? Everything looks grey and dreary and depressing. Even when they go into the factory, like, in the original, that scene when they go into the factory, just before they have the Pure Imagination song, that is a blissful moment when they go, oh my god, we're in another world. We're in a completely different world. With this, you're like, oh, there's a bit more colour, but that's really it. Oh, I don't know. It to me, it just creatively, I felt that the colors and the weren't reflective of how the tone should have been. They were reflective of the tone that Tim Burton wanted, obviously, but not of what the film should have been. The film should have been a fun, charming, light, story that really sort of, like the original taught. It teaches kids about to be more like Charlie. That's the whole moral of the story. With this, they're just fumbling through it. Like, all of the scenes in the factory are just dull. They are going through the motions, and you do not feel like anything. You do not feel like anything really has had the time taken over it, and it feels rushed and it feels too contained. I mean, you could almost say those factory scenes feel like they're in a separate film. God, I mean, as soon as Johnny Depp comes on, it feels like a different film. God, I mean, I like the exposition stuff. That's all well and good. Explaining about from Grandpa Joe's perspective. I mean, that was an interesting idea, giving Grandpa Joe a bit more of a central role in terms of the backstory and helping us. I mean, it gives him more character development and gives us a chance to understand the exposition a bit better. Sorry, I can't speak. So I like that. The only thing I don't really get is the stuff with the Indian prince. I know it's a very brief moment in the film, but for me, I have to address this. It's like, first of all, why would you want to live in an entire palace made of chocolate? Secondly, why the hell would you want to do all that in fucking India when it's like 45 degrees hot? How long did you think it was gonna last? Like, oh, I intend to live in this palace. Like, well, you're gonna fucking die. You're gonna fucking die. What did you think you were gonna do in the fucking chocolate palace? All he's doing is sitting there eating his other food. He might as well eat his palace. I mean, Wonka's right. Eat your own palace. I mean, I find that bizarre. If anybody can, clarify that for me, like, why would anybody be so stupid as to do that? Live in a chocolate palace in the middle of fucking India, which is one of the hottest countries in the world, and have it melt within the next day. Honestly, like, and how can you get cement made of chocolate? How can you get the bricks made of chocolate? I don't even want to go there anymore. Ugh. Also, you have Charlie's dad in this film. I think that's one thing that this film does have over the original, is the fact that you do get to understand about Charlie's dad, and that he's I mean, you don't understand much about him, but you at least know who he is and how he's supporting his family. He works for a toothpaste company. I mean, it's nice to see more of the struggle for the family. I do like those scenes. Yeah, I mean, and Helena Bonham Carter plays Charlie's mother briefly, and she gives an acceptable performance. It's not the first role I would have cast her in if I was the director, but she fits it surprisingly okay. It's fine. I think some of the CGI is a bit dated by this point, especially in the boat scene. That boat scene was quite good. I do like the boat scene when they're sort of sliding down the chocolate river. Although the soundtrack to accompany it is weird. That's another thing. What the fuck is up with this soundtrack? All of those weird noises. I mean, especially in the title sequence. Well, I mean, it's an entertaining title sequence, but what is it with the bloody soundtrack? Like, they're making those weird noises. Like, as soon as the Warner Brothers logo comes on, I was like, okay, this reminds me slightly of Harry Potter. But then as soon as the music comes on, I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, no. Like, this, I mean, I'm not making it up. That is what it sounds like. Go back, or at least watch the title sequence to this film on YouTube. My goodness me. It's bizarre. Like, who is it? Danny Elfman composed the music? Danny Elfman! This is a very respectable composer. I mean, it's probably obviously more catered to what Tim Burton is envisioning, but this is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You know, it sounds like a weird utopia or dystopia or something like that. It doesn't sound like it belongs. I mean, like the music for the original title sequence was great. It had a great charm to it. You know, it was like da 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 da. Like that's how it should have been. We needed something reminiscent of that, not do all those noises. Oh my god, we didn't need any of that. We didn't need that. Oh, speaking of music, the Oompa Loompas. First of all, I want to give credit to Deep Roy for his performance. All of those Oompa Loompas. It's really quite an achievement that they managed to get him to do all that. I do have to say though, the songs, I don't know, they're very hit and miss. I mean, they're kind of catchy, I guess, from a certain standpoint. I mean, the Augustus Gloop one is quite catchy, and the Violet one is good. I'm not too sure about the other two though. The Veruca one is a bit weird, and the Mike TV one is bizarre. When you have those shots of like the rock concert, oh god! I don't know where the ideas were coming from here. Like, I mean, the songs are supposed to be there to teach, you know, kids the lessons of the story. Um, and the original did that so perfectly, and with this, you just watch and you go, I can't understand what they're all singing, and it just feels like a Deep Roy concert. That's what it feels like. Well, at least in Tim Burton's mind, anyway. I don't know. I mean, I think this film is tonally just all wrong. Like, it's way too depressing and like dreary. That's what I get from it. It's dreary, and I think the direction from Tim Burton is, well, crap. It's pretty poor. Like, it's crap. I mean, you know, he's completely got it all wrong. It's not. Charlie the Chocolate Factory is supposed to be. Excuse me. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is supposed to be a story that is charming and heartwarming and teaches kids lessons at the same time. Not a dreary, weird interpretation where you have all these, you know, things and Johnny Depp doing Michael Jackson impression. Oh god. I mean credit where it's due. Christopher Lee in his brief cameo, I should say, as Wilbur Wonka the father. And the scene at the end is very touching when he's reunited with his father. It's we get brief insight into his childhood. It'd be nice to see the mother, see how you know, where his mother would have came from. But I mean, that's another thing. I do think maybe the film would have been fine without all of that. I mean, it's nice that they've done it, you know, to deviate from the original. And I suppose it's it is sort of honouring the book a bit more. However, I do feel that sometimes it was a bit distracting of what was going on. Maybe I think a restructuring might have worked, having the flashbacks, perhaps in the scene when Wonka takes, sorry, in the scene when Willy Wonka takes Charlie home, and he says, "Oh, do you want to come live in my factory?" And then when he asks him, "Can I bring my family?" And he's like, "Well, no, of course you can't." And then Charlie's like, "I wouldn't give up my family for anything, not for all the chocolate in the world." Maybe then would have been a perfect moment for him to say, you know, "Well, what about your family? You must have a family somewhere." Like that, like save all of those flashbacks they had previously, put those there in sequence, so then we have one sort of montage. That would have been I mean, because William Wonka's quite a mysterious character, and I think having that mystery throughout until that moment would have been perfect. And then, you know, It's yeah. I also think the comedy is very hit and miss with this film. There are parts when I laughed and it was quite genuinely quite funny, but other parts it was kind of cringy to watch. I think because of Johnny Depp's performance. This is probably Depp's weakest performance of any film, well, at least any film I've seen him do anyway. Uh, I don't know. There's something about this film doesn't work. I mean, you've got some good production design. I mean, the production values are good, I guess. And it is going to make you hungry. It's going to make you want to eat some chocolate. So that's good. But in the end, this film to me ends up being a creative mess. Like, I don't think it's horrible, but I just don't think it's very good. It's not bad, but it's not great. I mean, it's certainly not bad, but it's not really that good either. I can't quite put my finger on it. I think Tim Burton was the wrong director for this. I mean, you have that silly sort of Willy Wonka song that comes in as well when they're about to enter the factory. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's just strange, very strange. So yeah, as you can tell, I'm not really the biggest fan of this movie. And the like narration. I think it would have been interesting to have Willy Wonka himself narrate the story, or maybe Willy Wonka's father, Wilbur Wonka. Then a random Oompa Loompa who has a weird voice, slightly sort of African or Jamaican or something like that. Rather than having a random Oompa Loompa, but retrospective narrative and all that, it would have been better to have something. It would have, to me, it just would have made more sense. But in any case, yeah, and the film is about 2 hours long. Maybe they could have cut some of it down. But yeah, so yeah, I don't really like this film. I don't think it's like the worst of the worst, but it's. I mean, I wouldn't give it a 0 out of 10. It's not that bad, but it's a massive disappointment after the original, and it doesn't do anything for me. It's just a very unnecessary film. There's a minor good bits in it, but there's not really that many. So, I'm going to conclude this review by giving the Tim Burton Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I'm gonna have to give it about a 4 out of 10. I was gonna be generous and say 5, but then I thought, no, it doesn't really deserve that. Anyway, so that is my review of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So, yes. Excuse me, I was about to burp. Yeah. So, thank you guys all for watching, and as always, I'm Mr. Talos11. See ya.